the cloud painter awakens. High above the world, where the air grows thin and the sky stretches endlessly in all directions, there exists a place that few have ever seen. It is a realm of mist and light, where the boundaries between earth and heaven blur into soft watercolor washes of blue and white. Here, suspended on platforms of condensed vapor that shift and reshape with each gentle breeze, lives the cloud painter. The cloud painter is neither young nor old, neither entirely human nor wholly made of sky. Their form seems to shimmer at the edges, as if they are perpetually caught between solid and ethereal, between being and becoming. Some say they have always existed, born from the first breath of wind that ever stirred across the ancient oceans. Others believe they chose this solitary life, climbing higher and higher until the noise of the world below faded to nothing more than a distant whisper. Each morning, if morning can truly exist in a place where time moves like honey, the cloud painter awakens in their studio. This studio is not built of wood or stone, but of clouds themselves, clouds that have been shaped and molded over countless years into walls that glow with inner light when the sun rises. The floor is soft beneath the painter's feet, yielding and supportive, like walking on the surface of a gentle dream. Through the open archways, which have no doors and need no doors, the wind flows freely, carrying with it the scents of rain from distant places and the songs of birds who fly at altitudes where most creatures cannot venture. On this particular morning, the cloud painter rises slowly from their bed of cumulus, stretching arms that barely disturb the air around them. There is no rush here, no urgency pressing against the chest, no list of tasks demanding attention. There is only the day ahead, unfolding like a flower that has all the time in the world to bloom. The painter moves to the edge of their platform and looks out across the vast expanse of sky that serves as their canvas. Today, the sky is a pale blue, the color of forget-me-nots growing in a meadow that exists only in memory. It is mostly clear, with just a few scattered clouds drifting far below, thin and wispy, like thoughts that haven't quite formed into words. The painter observes them with quiet satisfaction. Yesterday's work, a magnificent arrangement of towering cumulus clouds that caught the sunset and held it like jewels, has moved on, carried by the jet streams to cast shadows over mountains and valleys hundreds of miles away. Today is a blank canvas, and the possibilities are endless. But the cloud painter does not rush to begin. Instead, they move through their morning ritual with deliberate slowness, savoring each small action. First, there is tea to be made. The water comes from the clouds themselves, collected in a crystal vessel that sits on a shelf carved from compressed vapor. The painter heats the water over a small flame that burns without fuel, fed only by the friction of air molecules dancing against each other. The tea leaves, where do they come from? Perhaps they are gifts from the wind, carried up from gardens far below. Perhaps they grow in some secret place, known only to those who dwell in the heights. The painter never questions these things. They simply steep the leaves in the hot water and watch as the clear liquid slowly transforms into amber. With the cup warming their hands, the cloud painter sits at the edge of their platform, legs dangling into the open air, and sips slowly. The tea tastes of earth and sunshine, of things that grow in soil, and it grounds them even as they float thousands of feet above the ground. Below, the world is waking up. The painter cannot see the details, the houses and roads, the people beginning their busy days, but they can sense the general stirring, the way the air changes as millions of small lives begin their daily movements. The painter feels a deep compassion for those below. They remember, in some distant corner of their being, what it was like to live where gravity held you firmly and time was measured in hours and minutes. They remember the weight of worry, the press of anxiety, the way the mind could become tangled in itself like yarn knotted beyond untangling. It is partly for those people, those worried and hurried souls, that the cloud painter creates their art. Finishing the tea, the painter rises and moves to their work table. This table is a marvel, a flat surface of tightly woven cloud matter that somehow remains solid enough to hold objects yet soft enough to reshape if needed. On it rest the tools of the painter's trade. There are no brushes here, no palette of paints in the traditional sense. Instead, there are crystalline instruments that look like they've been carved from frozen wind. There are small vials containing essences, the essence of morning fog, the essence of storm clouds heavy with rain, the essence of those perfect summer clouds that drift lazily across blue skies. There are tools for gathering moisture from the air, for compressing vapor into visible forms, for sculpting the invisible into the scene. The cloud painter picks up a long, slender instrument that catches the light and breaks it into small rainbows. They hold it up to the sky, feeling the weight of it, letting their intention settle into their chest like a seed finding soil. What shall today's clouds say? What message shall they carry to those who have eyes to see and hearts quiet enough to receive? The painter closes their eyes and listens to the wind. The wind is always speaking, always telling stories of where it has been and what it has touched. Today, the wind whispers of restlessness in the world below, of people moving too quickly, of minds spinning with thoughts that chase each other in endless circles. The painter nods slowly, understanding. Today's clouds will be an invitation to slowness, a reminder that the sky itself is never in a hurry. With their intention set, the cloud painter steps off their platform and into the open air. The first strokes. To fall through the sky without fear is a gift known to very few. The cloud painter descends slowly, not plummeting but drifting, moving through the air as a leaf might spiral down from a tree on an autumn afternoon. The wind catches them, supports them, becomes an extension of their body. They are not separate from the air. They are part of it, woven into its invisible currents like a thread in a vast, ever-shifting tapestry. As the painter descends, they begin to gather the materials for their work. The air at this altitude is full of moisture, invisible droplets so tiny that thousands could rest on the head of a pin. The painter extends their hands, and the slender instrument they carry begins to hum with a frequency felt rather than heard. It resonates with the water molecules, calling them, inviting them to come together. Slowly, almost shyly, the moisture begins to respond. At first, there is nothing visible, just a slight thickening in the air, a subtle change in the way the light passes through space. But the painter is patient. They move their hands in slow, graceful arcs, conducting an orchestra of water and air. The instrument in their hand traces patterns that seem random, but are actually deeply intentional, following principles older than language, older than thought itself. A wisp begins to form. It is barely there at first, just a suggestion of whiteness against the blue, like a breath exhaled on a cold morning. The painter encourages it, gently gathering more moisture to the spot, allowing the cloud to thicken and take on substance. They do not force the shape that would create something rigid and unnatural. Instead, they guide it the way a gardener might guide a vine, suggesting direction but allowing the essential nature of the thing to express itself. The first cloud begins to take form. It is a simple thing, elongated and soft-edged, stretching horizontally across a patch of sky. The painter floats around it, observing it from different angles, making small adjustments. A bit more density here, where the light should catch and scatter into brightness. A softer edge there, where the cloud should fade into the blue like a thought dissolving. The work is meticulous but never feels rushed. Each tiny adjustment is made with complete attention, as if this single cloud were the only thing in the entire universe that mattered. Time passes, though the painter pays it no attention. The sun climbs higher in the sky, changing the angle of light, and the cloud begins to glow. Its underside catches shadows, soft, gentle shadows the color of doves' wings, while its upper surface blazes white where the sunlight strikes it directly. The painter steps back, or rather floats back, to appreciate the work. The cloud hangs in the sky like a brushstroke of peace, its very presence an antidote to hurry. But one cloud does not make a composition. The sky is vast, and the painter's vision for today requires more. They drift to another location, several hundred feet away, and begin again. This time, the cloud that forms is different, rounder, more voluminous, rising higher into the atmosphere. The painter works with the natural tendency of warm air to rise, creating a cloud that seems to pile upon itself, building upward in soft, billowing formations. It is like watching a sculpture emerge, but this sculpture is made of nothing more substantial than mist and light. As the painter works, their mind is quiet. There are no thoughts of yesterday or tomorrow, no worries about whether the work is good enough, no comparison with clouds created in the past. There is only this moment, this gathering of water, this shaping of vapor into visible beauty. This state of complete presence is what the painter loves most about their work. In creating peace for others, they themselves exist in perfect peace. The second cloud takes shape beside the first, and already a relationship begins to form between them. They are not identical, nothing in nature is identical, but they complement each other. The first is horizontal and calm, suggesting rest and stillness. The second is vertical and full, suggesting growth and gentle possibility. Together, they create a balance, a visual conversation that speaks without words. The painter continues. A third cloud forms, smaller than the others, positioned slightly higher and further back. This one is thinner, more delicate, its edges so soft that it seems to be half dissolved even as it comes into being. It serves as a bridge between the foreground clouds and the deep blue beyond, creating depth and perspective in the sky canvas. As the morning progresses, the cloud painter works across a wide swath of sky, creating not a dense cloudscape, but an arrangement of carefully spaced forms. There is more blue than white, more emptiness than form, and this is intentional. The clouds are not meant to dominate but to accent, to provide points of rest for eyes that look upward from the busy world below. They are like pauses in music, the spaces between notes that give meaning to the melody. The painter moves through the air with a dancer's grace, their body describing arcs and spirals as they work. Sometimes they descend to work on the underside of a cloud, adding subtle texture that will catch the light in interesting ways. Sometimes they rise above their creations, looking down to see how the shadows fall, how the forms relate to each other from a bird's perspective. Each viewpoint offers new information, new possibilities for adjustment and refinement. The physical work of cloud painting is not strenuous, but it requires a different kind of energy, the energy of sustained attention, of continuous small choices, of remaining open and responsive to what the clouds themselves want to become. The painter can feel this energy flowing through them, a gentle current that connects them to the sky, to the water, to the light, to everything that is. Far below, though the painter cannot see them clearly, people are beginning to notice the clouds. A woman hanging laundry in her garden pauses, looking up. A child being hurried along a sidewalk stops walking, causing their parent to tug impatiently at their hand before looking up themselves and softening. A man sitting in traffic rolls down his window and tilts his head back, letting the sight of the peaceful clouds settle something in his chest that has been tight for days. The cloud painter does not know these specific people, but they feel the shift in the collective energy below, a slight easing, a small release of tension. This is why they paint. The sun continues its arc across the sky. The painter continues their work, adding clouds one by one, each unique, each perfectly placed. The composition grows slowly, organically, like a garden planted by someone who understands that the best gardens are never rushed. The language of clouds. By midday, the sky is transformed. What was once an empty canvas of blue is now graced with a scattered symphony of clouds, each one a carefully considered note in a larger composition. The cloud painter pauses in their work, suspended in the air between heaven and earth, and simply observes what has been created. There is a language written in these clouds, though it is not made of words. It is a language older and more fundamental than human speech, a language of shape and light, of presence and absence, of form emerging from formlessness. Those who look up with quiet minds can read this language, even if they do not realize they are reading it. The clouds speak of impermanence, reminding watchers that everything changes, that nothing stays fixed, and that this constant change is not something to fear, but something to find beautiful. They speak of spaciousness, of the vast room that exists when we stop filling every moment with doing and simply allow ourselves to be. The painter drifts slowly through their creation, moving between the clouds like a visitor in a gallery of their own making. Each cloud has its own character, its own personality. Some are dense and substantial, holding their forms with confidence. Others are ethereal and transparent, barely there, like secrets whispered so softly they might be imagined. Some catch the sunlight and glow with an inner radiance. Others rest in their own shadows, content to be subtle, to offer contrast rather than brilliance. As the painter observes, they notice something that always brings them quiet joy. The clouds are already beginning to change. This is the nature of cloud art. It is never finished, never permanent. Even as the painter watches, the edges of the clouds shift and soften, responding to air currents invisible to the eye. A cloud that was round begins to stretch slightly, elongating in one direction. Another develops a wispy tendril that reaches out like a gentle hand toward its neighbor. The shapes are in constant, slow motion, like a dance performed at such a slow speed that only the most patient observer would notice the movement. This impermanence is not a flaw in the work, it is the essence of it. The cloud painter does not try to fix the clouds in place, does not mourn their inevitable dissolution. Instead, they understand that the beauty of clouds lies partly in their willingness to change, their acceptance of their own temporary nature. In this way, Clouds are perfect teachers for anxious minds that grip too tightly to things, trying to keep everything fixed and certain and under control. The painter settles onto a particularly stable cloud, one dense enough to support their weight, and sits cross-legged on its surface. From this vantage point, they can see the full sweep of the morning's work spread across the sky. The clouds form a loose pattern, neither too regular nor too chaotic, achieving that delicate balance that feels natural and unforced. Some cluster together in groups of 2 or 3, creating small communities of form. Others stand alone, solitary but not lonely, comfortable in their isolation. The wind at this altitude is gentle but constant, and the painter can feel it moving across their face, through their hair, against their skin. The wind carries stories with it, fragments of the world below. The painter closes their eyes and simply listens with their whole being. They can sense the ocean far to the west, its vast wetness contributing moisture to the air. They can feel the mountains to the east, solid and ancient, creating updrafts as the sun warms their slopes. They can perceive the forests and fields, the cities and towns, all the varied textures of the world below, each contributing its own quality to the air that flows upward. In this listening, the painter understands what the afternoon's work should be. The morning clouds have created a foundation of peace, a baseline of calm. But the sky is large, and there is room for more, not too much more, never so much that the sky feels crowded or the clouds compete for attention, but enough to continue the story that has been started. The painter rises from their resting place and begins to drift eastward, toward a section of sky that is still completely clear. The clouds they have made so far are all in the western quadrant, and there is something pleasing about leaving the eastern sky open for now, allowing the composition to breathe, to have space for the eye to rest. But between the clouds and the empty blue, there should be something, a transition, a bridge, a gentle suggestion of connection. The painter begins to gather moisture again, but this time they work with an even lighter touch than before. The clouds they create now are barely there, high, thin cirrus clouds that form at an altitude where the air is so cold that the water freezes into tiny ice crystals. These clouds are different from the lower cumulus clouds the painter made earlier. They do not billow or pile up. Instead, they stretch out in long, delicate strands, like hair streaming in water, like silk scarves trailing in a breeze. Creating cirrus clouds requires a different kind of attention. The painter must work at the very edge of visibility, encouraging ice crystals to align in ways that catch the light without becoming too obvious, too insistent. These clouds should be discovered rather than seen, noticed only by those who truly take the time to look at the sky rather than simply glancing at it. The ice crystals begin to form, and the painter guides them gently, creating long, feathery streaks that arc across the upper atmosphere. These clouds move differently than the lower ones, faster, pulled by the jet stream into graceful curves that suggest movement and flow. They are like calligraphy written across the sky, elegant and understated. As the painter works at this higher altitude, the world below seems even more distant than usual. Up here, the air is thin and the silence is profound. Even the wind makes less sound when there is so little air to move. The painter can feel the edge of space above them, the place where the atmosphere gives way to the void beyond. There is something both humbling and exhilarating about working at this threshold, about creating beauty at the very limit of where beauty can exist. The cirrus clouds spread slowly across the eastern sky, creating a veil so subtle that someone glancing quickly might not even notice it. But for those who look with attention, who allow their gaze to soften and their minds to quiet, these high clouds add a layer of depth and complexity to the sky. They suggest that there is always more to see than we first perceive, that beauty often exists in the subtle and the overlooked. Time continues its patient passage. The sun moves through its arc, and the light changes minute by minute, though the changes are so gradual that they cannot be perceived in any single moment. The painter works without hurry, allowing each cloud to form at its own pace, trusting the process completely. Shadows and light. The afternoon deepens, and the quality of light begins its slow transformation. The sun, which at midday hung almost directly overhead, blazing with white intensity, now begins its gradual descent toward the western horizon. The light shifts from white to the palest gold, a change so subtle that it happens beneath the threshold of conscious awareness. But the cloud painter notices. The painter notices everything. This changing light transforms the clouds in ways both profound and delicate. The morning clouds, which appeared crisp and bright against the blue sky, now take on warmer tones. Their white surfaces begin to blush with hints of cream and butter yellow. The shadows on their undersides deepen from pale gray to something richer, something closer to lavender. The clouds become more dimensional, more sculptural, as the angled light reveals contours and curves that were less visible when the sun was high. The painter descends from the upper atmosphere, leaving the delicate cirrus clouds to continue their slow dance across the eastern sky. They return to the middle altitudes, to where the substantial cumulus clouds rest, and they move among these clouds like a gardener walking through a beloved garden in the afternoon, checking on each plant, appreciating how the changing light reveals new aspects of familiar forms. There is a particular cloud that draws the painter's attention, a large, towering formation that has grown since the morning. Clouds are living things in their way, fed by rising warm air, shaped by wind in temperature and pressure. This cloud has found a column of warm air rising from the earth below, and it has built itself upward, piling higher and higher, becoming more magnificent with each passing hour. The painter did not plan for this cloud to grow so large, but they are pleased by it. The best art always contains an element of surprise, of collaboration between intention and accident. The painter floats up alongside this towering cloud, rising along its flank, observing how it has developed. The base of the cloud is dark, shadowed from the sun, creating a foundation of cool gray. But the body of the cloud rises into full sunlight, its surface a brilliant white that almost hurts to look at directly. And at the very top, where the cloud pushes into the coldest reaches of the troposphere, ice crystals have begun to form, creating a cap that is starting to spread outward like an anvil, like a mushroom, like a wise old tree spreading its branches. This cloud has become a giant, a monument, a cathedral of water and air. The painter circles it slowly, making small adjustments here and there, softening an edge that has become too sharp, encouraging a bit more density in a section that is becoming too wispy. But mostly, the painter simply appreciates what has emerged. There is humility in the painter's work, an understanding that they are not the sole creator of these clouds. They are a collaborator with forces much larger than themselves, with the sun and the wind, with the water that rises from oceans and lakes, with the very rotation of the earth that sets the air in motion. As the painter works on the towering cloud, they become aware of something happening below. Far beneath, miles down, a town is experiencing a hot afternoon. The painter can sense the heat rising from sun-baked streets and parking lots, can feel the discomfort of people seeking shade. And this great cloud the painter is tending is beginning to drift over that town, carried by the prevailing winds. The painter watches as the shadow of the cloud moves across the landscape below. They cannot see the specific details, but they can imagine them. The sudden relief as the harsh sunlight is blocked, the cooling that happens when the earth is given respite from the sun's direct rays. Children playing in yards look up, grateful for the shade. Elderly people sitting on porches feel the temperature drop a few precious degrees. Dogs lying in the grass raise their heads, sensing the change. This is one of the gifts the cloud painter offers, though it is rarely recognized as such. The clouds do not just beautify the sky, they provide comfort, relief, balance. They are part of the great system that keeps the world livable, that prevents the sun from scorching the earth, that moves water from the oceans to the land, that creates the conditions for life to flourish. The painter feels a deep sense of purpose in this moment. Their work is not just aesthetic, it is functional, necessary good. They are part of something larger than art, larger than beauty, though art and beauty are certainly woven through it all. They are part of the maintenance of the world, the daily tending that keeps everything in balance. With this awareness glowing gently in their chest, the painter continues their work. They move to another section of sky, where the clouds are sparser, more scattered. Here they create something different, a series of small clouds, each one distinct, spread across the sky like stepping stones across a stream. These clouds are playful, almost whimsical. They invite the imagination to connect them, to see patterns and pictures, to find shapes within their random forms. The painter knows that people below will look at these clouds and see different things. One person might see a fleet of ships sailing across the blue ocean of sky. Another might see a procession of animals, a rabbit, perhaps, followed by a turtle, followed by something that could be a bird, or could be a fish, or could be nothing at all except cloud. A child might see a dragon. An old person might see the face of someone they loved long ago. The clouds do not insist on any single interpretation. They are generous in their ambiguity, allowing each observer to bring their own meaning, their own story. This is another gift of clouds. They are mirrors for the imagination. In their shapeless shapes, in their constant transformations, they provide a screen onto which the mind can project its own images, its own narratives. For anxious minds that spin in circles of worry, this kind of gentle, creative projection can be deeply healing. It redirects attention outward, towards something beautiful and ever-changing, and away from the internal loops of fear and stress. The painter creates these small clouds with particular care, making each one interesting enough to engage attention, but simple enough to allow interpretation. They are like haiku, brief, suggestive, open. They do not explain themselves. They simply are. As the afternoon continues its slow progression toward evening, the painter works steadily across the sky, adding clouds here, adjusting clouds there, sometimes allowing a cloud to dissipate if it no longer serves the overall composition. The work is meditative, rhythmic, requiring focus but not strain. The painter's mind remains quiet, present, absorbed in the slow unfolding of creation. The wisdom of water. There comes a moment in every afternoon when the world seems to pause and take a breath. It is not a specific time on the clock, but rather a quality that descends over everything, a softening, a slight loosening of the day's grip. The urgency of morning has passed. The evening has not yet arrived with its own particular energy. In this suspended middle time, there is room for reflection, for stillness, for noticing things that go unnoticed in busier hours. The cloud painter feels this shift and responds to it by pausing their own work. They settle onto a mid-sized cloud, one with enough density to provide comfortable support, and they simply sit. Below them, the world continues its endless activities, cars moving along roads, people working at desks, children playing in schoolyards. But up here, in the realm of clouds and wind and light, there is a different rhythm, a different way of being. The painter looks at their hands, studying them in the golden afternoon light. These hands have shaped so many clouds over so much time. They have learned the subtle art of working with water in its most delicate form. Not liquid water that can be poured or splashed, but water suspended in air, existing in that liminal state between visible and invisible, between substance and spirit. The painter has learned to feel water's moods, to understand what it wants to do, where it wants to go. Water, the painter has learned, has its own wisdom. It does not resist. It does not force. It accepts gravity and flows downward, yet it also rises, evaporating from oceans and lakes, drawn upward by the sun's warmth to form clouds. It takes whatever shape is offered to it, the shape of a river's bed, the shape of a cup, the shape of a cloud. Yet in accepting all shapes, it maintains its essential nature. It remains water, always water, no matter what form it takes. This is a lesson the painter contemplates often, especially when thinking about the people below who struggle with anxiety and stress. So much human suffering comes from resistance, from fighting against what is, from trying to force life into shapes it does not naturally take, from holding rigidly to forms that need to change. Water teaches a different way. Water teaches acceptance without passivity, teaches yielding without weakness, teaches constant change without loss of identity. The painter rises from their resting place and moves toward the western part of the sky, where the sun will eventually set. This section has fewer clouds than the eastern quadrant, and the painter decides to keep it that way. The sunset, when it comes, will need space to display its colors. Too many clouds in the west would obscure the spectacle, would interrupt the daily ceremony of the sun's departure. But a few clouds, carefully placed, will enhance the sunset, will catch the colors and multiply them, will turn the end of day into a celebration. The painter begins to create clouds with the sunset in mind. These are different from the clouds made earlier in the day. They are positioned at specific altitudes, where they will catch the low-angled light most effectively. They are shaped with attention to how light will pass through and around them, creating opportunities for rays and beams, and the spectacular effects that make people stop whatever they are doing to watch the sky. As the painter works, they think about the relationship between light and darkness, between day and night. In the human world below, darkness is often feared. People fill their lives with artificial lights, pushing back against the natural rhythm of day, giving way to night. They fear the darkness of night, and they also fear the metaphorical darkness, the unknown, the uncertain, the uncontrolled. But the painter, who lives in the sky and witnesses every dawn and every dusk, knows that darkness is not an enemy. Darkness is a rest, a renewal, a necessary counterpoint to light. Without night, there would be no sleep, no dreams, no stars. Without the unknown, there would be no discovery, no growth, no possibility. The clouds the painter creates now are thin and horizontal, stretched across the western sky in layers. They are positioned at different altitudes, creating a three-dimensional arrangement that will catch the sunset colors at slightly different times, prolonging the display, making it richer and more complex. The painter works with a light touch, creating suggestion rather than statement, creating potential rather than conclusion. As the work progresses, the painter becomes aware of birds. A flock of them is flying through the cloudscape, migrating perhaps, or simply traveling from one feeding ground to another. They weave between the clouds with effortless grace, their wings beating in steady rhythm, their bodies knowing exactly where they are going even though the destination is far beyond the horizon. The painter watches them with admiration. Birds are master navigators of the sky, at home in the air in ways that even the cloud painter, for all their time spent aloft, can never quite match. One bird separates from the flock and spirals upward, riding a thermal current, climbing higher and higher with barely a flap of its wings. It rises until it is level with the painter, and for a moment, the bird and the painter regard each other. The bird's eye is bright and black, unreadable, ancient. What does the bird think of these clouds that appear in the sky? Does it notice them as art, or simply as features of the landscape, like mountains or rivers? The painter will never know, and that is perfectly fine. Not everything needs to be understood. Some mysteries are better left as mysteries. The bird catches another current and glides away, rejoining its flock, and the painter returns to their work. They add a few more delicate touches to the western clouds, a wisp here, a slight thickening there. The composition is nearly complete now. The sky has been transformed from the empty blue of morning into a living gallery, a space filled with form and light and shadow, with movement and stillness, with presence and space. The painter drifts back toward the center of their creation, to a point where they can see the full scope of the day's work. The eastern sky with its high cirrus veils, the central sky with its substantial cumulus formations, the western sky with its carefully arranged layers awaiting the sunset. It is good, not perfect. Perfection is not the goal, and would be impossible anyway with materials as fluid and changeable as clouds, but good, balanced, harmonious, peaceful. Far below, though the painter cannot see individual faces or hear individual voices, people are being affected by these clouds. A stressed executive looks up during a walk and feels something in their chest unknot slightly. A teenager lying in the grass stares at the clouds and forgets, for a few minutes, the social pressures that usually dominate their thoughts. An elderly woman watching from a window feels a connection to all the other times in her long life when she has watched clouds drift by, and in that continuity, she finds comfort. The clouds are doing their work, which is not separate from the painter's work, but an extension of it. The painter creates the clouds, but the clouds create effects that ripple outward in ways the painter can never fully trace or measure. This is as it should be. Art is not just the object created. It is all the responses to that object, all the feelings and thoughts and memories and changes it produces in those who encounter it. The memory of rain. As the afternoon settles into its quietest hour, the cloud painter becomes aware of a subtle shift in the atmosphere. It is a change so small that most would not notice it. A slight increase in humidity, a barely perceptible drop in air pressure, a quality in the wind that speaks of distant weather systems moving across the face of the earth. The painter, whose senses are attuned to such things after countless seasons spent living among clouds, recognizes these signs immediately. Somewhere far to the south, rain is falling. The painter cannot see the rain. It is hundreds of miles away, beyond the curve of the horizon, but they can feel its presence in the air, can sense the way it changes the atmospheric pressure, the way it sends ripples through the great ocean of air that covers the planet. Rain is a cousin to clouds, another form that water takes in its endless cycle from earth to sky and back again. The painter has great respect for rain, for its directness, for the way it completes the cycle that clouds begin. This awareness of distant rain stirs something in the painter's memory. They remember, though the memory is old and somewhat dreamlike, what it was like to experience rain from below, to stand on solid ground and feel drops of water falling on their face, their arms, their hair. They remember the smell of rain on hot pavement, the sound of rain on rooftops, the way rain transformed the world, making colors deeper and sounds softer, and the air itself feel clean and new. The painter wonders, not for the first time, about the journey each raindrop takes. A drop of water evaporates from the ocean, rises into the sky, becomes part of a cloud, travels perhaps thousands of miles carried by winds, and then falls back to earth, into a forest, perhaps, or onto a city street, or into a river that will carry it back to the ocean to begin the cycle again. Each drop is ancient, has been making this journey for billions of years, has been part of countless clouds and countless rains, has been drunk by dinosaurs and frozen in glaciers, and held in the cells of every living thing that has ever existed. This thought fills the painter with a sense of profound connection. The water that makes up the clouds they shape today has its own history, its own story. Some of this water might have been part of clouds painted years ago, decades ago, centuries ago. Water remembers nothing and everything. It carries within it the memory of everywhere it has been, even as it remains eternally present, eternally itself. The painter decides to create something new, a cloud that honors rain, that acknowledges the completion of the water cycle. They choose a location slightly apart from the other clouds, a space where a single cloud can stand alone without competing for attention. And there, they begin to gather water vapor with particular intention, creating a cloud that is darker than the others, denser, more substantial. This cloud grows slowly, fed by the painter's focused attention and by the natural dynamics of the atmosphere. As more water condenses within it, the cloud becomes heavier, more saturated. Its base darkens from pale gray to charcoal. Its interior fills with billions upon billions of tiny water droplets, each one waiting for the moment when it will become heavy enough to fall. But the painter does not allow this cloud to reach that tipping point. They keep it balanced on the edge, full of potential, but not yet releasing that potential. It hangs in the sky like a promise, like an inhaled breath. This rain cloud, or almost rain cloud, adds a different quality to the sky's composition. Where the other clouds speak of lightness and peace, this one speaks of power held in check, of energy contained, of transformation waiting to happen. It is a reminder that peace is not the absence of power, but the conscious choice not to unleash it unnecessarily. It is a reminder that strength and gentleness can coexist, that something can be soft and formidable at the same time. The painter circles this dark cloud, examining it from all angles, ensuring it is balanced correctly. Too much water and it will begin to rain, which is not the intention for today's sky. Too little, and it will lose its character, its gravitas, and become just another ordinary cloud. The balance must be precise, and the painter adjusts and readjusts, adding a bit of vapor here, allowing a bit to dissipate there, until the cloud sits at exactly the right point. Full of possibility, pregnant with potential, but stable, controlled, at peace with itself. Satisfied with this creation, the painter moves away from it, allowing it to exist in its own space. The dark cloud sits apart from the others, a punctuation mark in the sky's sentence, a moment of emphasis in an otherwise gentle composition. It draws the eye, creates contrast, makes the lighter clouds seem even lighter by comparison. It is necessary. Without it, the sky would be too sweet, too uncomplicated. This single dark cloud adds depth, adds complexity, adds a touch of drama that makes the overall composition more interesting, more complete. As the painter drifts through the afternoon sky, they think about the relationship between clouds and human emotions. People often use cloud-related metaphors to describe their inner weather. They speak of being under a cloud when they are sad, of having a cloud hanging over them when they are worried, of things being cloudy when they are unclear. But the painter knows that actual clouds are not sad or worrying or confusing. Clouds simply are. They form, they change, they dissipate. They hold water and release it. They block sunlight and allow it through. They are neither good nor bad. They are necessary. They are natural. They are exactly what they need to be in each moment. Perhaps, the painter thinks, people could learn to relate to their emotions the way the sky relates to clouds. Emotions come and go, like clouds forming and dissolving. They change shape constantly. They are influenced by conditions, by what we eat, how we sleep, what we experience. They are real and present, but they are not permanent, and they are not the entirety of who we are. We are the sky, vast and spacious, and emotions are the weather that passes through us. Sometimes the weather is stormy, sometimes it is clear, but the sky itself remains, constant and unchanging beneath all the temporary conditions. This perspective, this idea of being the sky rather than the clouds, is something the painter wishes they could communicate more directly to the people below. But the painter's language is limited to shapes and light, to the silent vocabulary of clouds. They cannot speak in words, cannot write instructions or explanations. They can only create beauty and hope that those who see it will sense, on some level beneath words, the truth it embodies. The painter returns their attention to the present moment, to the actual sky around them. The afternoon is advancing toward evening now. The light is definitely golden, no longer the white gold of earlier, but a deeper, richer tone that speaks of the day's maturity. The sun is descending toward the western horizon, where the carefully arranged clouds wait to receive its light and transform it into color. But before the sunset begins, there is still time, still work to be done. The painter moves through the sky, making final adjustments to various clouds, softening an edge here, adding a bit of texture there. These small refinements are subtle. Most observers would never notice them, but the painter knows they matter. The difference between good art and great art often lies in these tiny details, in the willingness to make one more adjustment, to spend one more moment ensuring everything is exactly right. The approach of evening. The world is changing colors now, almost imperceptibly, like a photograph slowly adjusting its tone. The blue of the sky, which was bright and clear at midday, has deepened slightly, taking on a quality that is harder to name. Still blue, but a blue that suggests the approach of something else, a blue that is already beginning to remember the colors that will soon flood across it. The clouds, too, are changing. The pure whites of morning and afternoon are warming, taking on hints of cream and ivory, the palest suggestions of the gold that will soon become much more pronounced. The cloud painter floats in stillness, watching these changes with the attention of someone who has witnessed thousands of sunsets but never grown tired of them. Each one is different. Each one is unrepeatable. The specific arrangement of clouds, the particular quality of the air, the amount of dust and moisture in the atmosphere, all of these factors combine to create a sunset that has never existed before and will never exist again. This is the glory of impermanence, the beauty of things that come into being and pass away in their perfect time. The painter knows that their most important work of the day is approaching. The morning and afternoon clouds were preparation, foundation, the quiet verses that make the climactic chorus more meaningful. But the sunset clouds, these are the crescendo, the moment when the sky will sing its loudest song. And yet, the painter reminds themselves, even the crescendo must be shaped with restraint, with intention, with respect for the space and silence that make any music meaningful. The sun is now low enough that its light is beginning to strike the undersides of the high cirrus clouds the painter created hours ago. These thin, wispy clouds are the first to catch the changing light, and they begin to glow with a subtle pink, like the inside of certain seashells, like the flush on the cheek of someone who has been walking in cold air. The color is delicate, almost shy, but it marks the beginning of the transformation. The painter descends to a lower altitude, coming to rest on one of the larger cumulus clouds in the western sky. From here, they have a perfect view of the sun, which has dropped to perhaps 2 hand widths above the horizon. The sun at this angle no longer feels harsh or blinding. Its light has traveled through so much atmosphere that it has softened, mellowed, become something that can be looked at almost directly, though the painter still squints slightly against its brightness. The painter knows that the clouds they created earlier in the west are now in perfect position. They are arranged in horizontal layers at different altitudes, creating a 3-dimensional stage for the light to play across. The lowest clouds will turn gold first, then orange, then red. The middle clouds will catch the light a few minutes later, adding their own colors to the display. The highest clouds will be the last to darken, holding onto the sunlight longest, glowing pink and purple long after the sun has dipped below the horizon. But the painter is not quite finished. There is one more element to add, one final touch that will make the sunset as powerful as it can be. The painter rises from their resting place and begins to create a new formation, a thin bank of clouds positioned exactly at the horizon line, directly where the sun will set. These clouds must be carefully calibrated. Too thick, and they will simply block the sun, creating a dull, obscured sunset. Too thin, and they will have no impact at all. The balance must be exact. The painter works with intense focus, gathering moisture at the precise altitude where it will intersect with the sun's path. The clouds that form are wispy and broken, more gap than substance, more air than water. They stretch horizontally along the horizon like a scattered fence, like a torn veil, like the keys of some enormous piano. These clouds will allow the sun to play through them, creating rays and beams, creating that spectacular effect of light radiating outward from a central point, what some people call God rays or Jacob's ladder, those luminous shafts that seem to connect heaven and earth. As the painter completes this final formation, they feel a sense of deep satisfaction. The stage is set. The players are in position. Now all that remains is to wait for the performance to begin. And the painter, who has learned the virtue of patience through countless hours of watching clouds form and dissolve, is very good at waiting. The sun continues its descent, and the colors begin to intensify. The pale pink in the high cirrus clouds deepens to coral, then to salmon, then to a brilliant orange pink that seems to glow from within. The larger cumulus clouds below them begin to catch the light on their upper surfaces, their whites transforming into gold, into amber, into honey. The shadows on the undersides of these clouds deepen from gray to indigo, creating a dramatic contrast between light and dark, between illumination and shadow. Far below, people are stopping what they are doing to watch. A family eating dinner pauses, everyone turning to look out the window. A runner on a trail stops running and stands with hands on hips, breathing hard but forgetting their fatigue in the face of the sky's beauty. A couple having an argument falls silent as the light streams through their window, and in that silence, something in them softens, remembers what brought them together in the first place. The painter senses these moments of attention, these brief pauses when people stop their rushing and doing and simply look, simply receive the gift the sky is offering. This is the purpose of beauty, not to decorate or distract, but to interrupt, to break through the trance of busyness, to remind people that they are alive in a world that is full of wonder. The sun touches the horizon clouds the painter created, and the magic begins. The light streams through the gaps between the clouds, creating those spectacular radiating beams. The beams fan out across the sky like the spokes of a wheel, like the fingers of an enormous hand reaching out in blessing. Where the light passes through the clouds seem to catch fire, glowing orange and gold. Where the clouds block the light, dark rays extend upward into the sky, creating a pattern of alternating light and shadow that is both dramatic and serene. The painter watches with quiet joy. This is what they worked all day to create, not just beautiful clouds, but a relationship between clouds and light that produces something greater than either element alone. The clouds give the light something to interact with, something to reveal its nature, its direction, its power. The light gives the clouds visibility, dimension, glory. Together, they create this moment of transcendent beauty. And the moment continues to evolve, to deepen, to transform. The sun drops lower, and the colors shift again. The oranges deepen to red. The pinks become magenta, and then purple. The blue sky above the sunset turns dark, shifts toward violet, begins its own transformation toward night. The whole western sky becomes a gradient of impossible colors, each tone blending seamlessly into the next. Yellow to orange to red to pink to purple to blue to indigo. The painter knows that these colors exist because of the way light interacts with the atmosphere. How different wavelengths of light are scattered differently by air molecules and particles. How the longer wavelengths of red and orange can travel through more atmosphere without being scattered away. The painter knows the science, but the science does not diminish the beauty. If anything, understanding the mechanism makes the beauty more profound, more worthy of reverence. The gifts of dusk. The sun is half hidden now, balanced on the edge of the world. From the cloud painter's perspective high above, the sun appears to be sinking into the distant horizon, swallowed slowly by the curve of the earth. The light it casts is now purely horizontal, streaming across the world at a low angle that transforms everything it touches. Mountains that looked ordinary in the bright light of midday now glow on their western faces while their eastern sides fall into deep shadow. Rivers and lakes become ribbons and pools of reflected fire. Even the humblest objects, a fence post, a mailbox, a parked car, become briefly beautiful in this light. The clouds the painter has created throughout the day are now fulfilling their ultimate purpose. Each one has become a vessel for color, a canvas for light. The dark cloud the painter made earlier, the one heavy with potential rain, has transformed into something magnificent. Its shadowed base is now deep purple, almost black, but its upper edges catch the sun's light and burn with orange fire, creating a dramatic contrast that draws the eye and holds it. This single cloud has become the focal point of the entire sky, a reminder that darkness and light are always intertwined, that beauty often emerges from contrast and tension. The painter drifts slowly westward, following the sun's path, wanting to observe the sunset from every angle. As they move, they pass through their own creations, through the very clouds they shaped with such care. Moving through a cloud from the inside is a strange and wonderful experience. The world disappears into whiteness, or in this case, into a golden mist shot through with pink. Vision is reduced to a few feet. Sound becomes muffled. There is only the sensation of cool moisture against the skin, the feeling of being suspended in something that is barely there, barely real. The painter emerges from the cloud and continues westward, and now they can see the sun in its full glory, no longer filtered through clouds. It is enormous at the horizon, made larger by an optical illusion created by the atmosphere. It is deep orange now, darkening toward red, its edges softening, its fierce brightness finally tamed enough to look at almost directly. The painter has seen this sight thousands of times, and yet it never loses its power to move them, to create in them a feeling that has no name, but that lives somewhere between awe and gratitude and peace. As the last sliver of the sun slips below the horizon, something remarkable happens. The light does not immediately disappear. Instead, the sky becomes even more colorful, more vivid. This is the famous afterglow, the period just after sunset when the sky often displays its most intense colors. The horizon blazes with orange and red, but above these warm tones, the sky shifts through cooler colors, rose and lavender and violet, creating a spectrum that spans from warm to cool, from earth to heaven. The clouds continue to hold these colors, to amplify them, to spread them across a wider canvas than the sunset alone could fill. The high cirrus clouds, now far to the east of the painter, are glowing pink against the darkening blue sky. The cumulus clouds in the center of the sky are catching the last golden light on their edges, while their bodies fall into shadow. The western clouds, nearest the vanished sun, are still brilliant with orange and red, refusing to give up the day without a final, spectacular display. The painter turns slowly in the air, looking at the full sweep of the sky, east to west, north to south. The entire dome of heaven has become a single work of art, a coherent composition that nonetheless contains infinite variety and detail. Every direction offers something different, some new combination of color and cloud and light. An observer on the ground, standing in one spot and looking in one direction, will see only a fraction of this beauty. But the painter, suspended in the middle of it all, can see the whole symphony at once. And then, as the painter watches, the colors begin to fade. The oranges soften to peach, then to pink, then to gray. The reds darken to purple, then to indigo, then to near blackness. The golden light drains away like water flowing out of a bowl. The day is ending, surrendering its brightness, making room for night. This fading is not sad. It is natural, necessary, right? The day has given everything it had to give. Now it is time for rest, for darkness, for the different beauties that only night can offer. The painter feels a deep tiredness settling into their limbs, a good tiredness, the kind that comes after meaningful work completed with full attention. They have been creating clouds since dawn, have poured their focus and intention into this single day's sky. And now the day is done. The clouds will continue to exist through the night, though they will be invisible in the darkness except when the moon illuminates them. They will continue to change, to drift, to transform, following their own nature without any intervention from the painter. The painter begins to ascend, rising toward the studio high above. As they climb, the sky around them grows darker. The blue deepens, shifts toward indigo, begins to reveal the first stars. Venus appears first, as it always does, brilliant in the western sky where the last light lingers. Then other stars emerge, the bright ones first, then the dimmer ones as the darkness deepens and eyes adjust. By the time the painter reaches their studio platform, the sky has transformed completely. Where there was blue, there is now black. Where there were colors, there is now darkness punctuated by starlight. The clouds that were so vivid during the day are now barely visible, just slightly darker shapes against the dark sky. The world below has lit up with artificial lights, cities glowing like scattered embers, roads marked by moving headlights, houses shining with the warm light of windows. The painter enters their studio, which glows softly with its own gentle luminescence. The walls of cloud, compressed and shaped over many years, seem to hold light within them, releasing it slowly like a phosphorescent creature from the deep sea. The painter is grateful for this soft light. After the spectacular display of the sunset, harsh brightness would be jarring, unwelcome. This gentle glow is exactly right for the transition from day to night, from activity to rest. The painter moves to a simple table and prepares another cup of tea, using water collected from clouds, heating it over the small eternal flame. As the water warms, the painter stands at the edge of the platform and looks out over the night sky. The stars are fully visible now, thousands of them, millions of them, stretching away into infinite distance. The painter knows that some of these stars no longer exist. Their light has traveled for so many years that the stars themselves may have died long ago. Yet their light remains, still traveling, still reaching across the vast emptiness to touch eyes that look upward. This thought connects to something the painter has been contemplating all day: the nature of time, the way the past and present interweave. the light from dead stars, the water and clouds that has cycled through the world for billions of years. The way beauty created in one moment continues to affect people long after that moment has passed. Nothing is ever truly lost. Everything continues, in some form, forever. The tea is ready. The painter pours it into a simple cup and sits, legs crossed, at the edge of the platform. They sip slowly, tasting earth and leaf, and the faint sweetness of honey that seems to come from the clouds themselves. The night air is cool but not cold. A gentle breeze moves across the painter's face, carrying with it the vast silence of the upper atmosphere. The night garden. Night in the upper atmosphere is different from night on the ground. Down below, darkness means the absence of light, the closing in of walls and ceilings, the limitation of vision to whatever can be illuminated by lamps and screens. But up here, in the realm of clouds and stars, night is not an absence but a presence, a vast, deep presence that surrounds everything, that holds within it mysteries and beauties that cannot exist in daylight. The cloud painter finishes their tea and sets the cup aside. Sleep will come soon, but not yet. There is something the painter does most nights, a practice that is both meditation and art, both observation and creation. The painter calls it tending the night garden, though there are no flowers here, no soil, no plants in any conventional sense. The night garden is made of clouds and starlight, of darkness and the subtle illuminations that exist within darkness. The painter rises and steps off the platform, descending into the night sky. At this hour, the air is at its calmest. The thermal currents that rise from the sun-warmed earth during the day have ceased. The winds have gentled. Everything has settled into stillness, or as close to stillness as the atmosphere ever comes. The painter moves through this quiet air like a swimmer moving through still water, each movement deliberate and slow. The clouds the painter created during the day are still here, but they are transformed by darkness. What was brilliant white is now shades of gray and black. What was clearly defined is now ambiguous, mysterious. The painter cannot see these clouds in the same way they could during the day, but they can sense them, can feel the slight changes in temperature and humidity that mark the boundaries between cloud and clear air, can hear the barely perceptible whisper of moisture condensing and evaporating. But there is one source of light in the night sky besides the stars, and that is the moon. Tonight, the moon is waxing, more than half full, bright enough to illuminate the clouds and turn them into ghostly forms that glow with reflected silver light. The painter moves toward the moonlit clouds, toward these shapes that look so different from their daytime selves. In moonlight, clouds become dreamlike, ethereal, mysterious. Their edges blur and soften even more than they do in daylight. Their shadows are subtle rather than harsh. They seem to float in a dimensionless space, neither clearly near nor clearly far. Looking at moonlit clouds is like looking at memories. You can see their general shape, their essential nature, but the details are obscured, softened, made gentle by distance and darkness. The painter approaches one of the large cumulus clouds, the same towering formation they tended during the afternoon. In daylight, this cloud was magnificent and sculptural, its contours clearly defined by the interplay of direct sunlight and shadow. Now in moonlight, it is a shape of silver and shadow, mysterious and strange. The painter circles it slowly, observing how the moon's light catches on the cloud's upper surface while the sides and base fall into deep darkness. There is something in the painter's heart that responds to this transformation, that finds beauty in the way daylight certainty becomes nighttime mystery. During the day, everything is clear, visible, knowable. During the night, things retreat into ambiguity, into suggestion rather than statement. And both modes are necessary. Both are beautiful. The anxious mind, the painter thinks, often fears the darkness and mystery, wants everything to be clear and certain and knowable. But wisdom knows that mystery is not the same as danger, that not knowing is not the same as being lost. The painter extends their hands and begins to make subtle adjustments to the moonlit cloud. These changes are different from the work done during the day. In daylight, the painter shapes clouds to catch the sun, to create specific effects with light and shadow. In moonlight, the painter shapes clouds to enhance mystery, to create forms that invite the imagination, that suggest rather than define. The painter softens the edges of the cloud even more, creating transitions so gradual that it becomes impossible to say exactly where the cloud ends and the clear air begins. They thin out certain sections so that moonlight can filter through, creating areas of luminous translucency that glow like frosted glass. They add subtle textures to the cloud's surface, tiny variations in density that catch the moonlight in complex ways, creating patterns that shift and change as the observer's perspective changes. This work is slower than the daylight work, more intuitive, more meditative. The painter is not trying to create something spectacular or dramatic. They are trying to create something subtle, something that speaks in whispers rather than shouts, something that invites quiet contemplation rather than excited exclamation. As the painter works, they become aware of the night creatures, the animals and insects that are active while most of the world sleeps. Far below, owls are hunting, their silent wings carrying them over fields and forests. Bats weave through the air, using echolocation to catch insects, creating patterns of flight too complex and rapid for human eyes to follow. Moths flutter toward any light they can find, following some instinct older than reason. All of these creatures are part of the night's community, the world that exists in darkness. And there are creatures up here too, in the upper atmosphere, though they are few and strange. Occasionally, the painter encounters insects that have been carried aloft by updrafts. Tiny creatures tumbling through space so far above their usual habitat that they seem like visitors from another world. Sometimes birds pass through, migrating at night, using the stars to navigate across continents. Once, years ago, the painter saw a weather balloon released from some research station far below, drifting silently through the clouds, its scientific instruments recording data that would be analyzed by people who would never know that the cloud painter had watched their balloon pass by. The painter finishes with the large cloud and moves on to others, making small adjustments here and there, tending the night garden with the care of someone who loves this work, who finds in it a purpose and a peace. Some clouds are softened. Some are left exactly as they are, needing no adjustment. Some are allowed to begin dissipating, their water vapor returning to the air, their forms dissolving back into the invisibility from which they came. As the painter works, the moon travels across the sky, its light shifting angle, changing the way it illuminates the clouds. Early in the night, the moon was low, and its light came from an angle similar to the setting sun, creating long shadows and dramatic contrasts. Now, as the night deepens, the moon has climbed higher, and its light falls more directly downward, creating a softer, more even illumination that makes the clouds glow from above. The painter pauses in their work and simply floats, suspended between earth and stars, between the world of solid things and the world of light and space. This is a moment of pure being, without thought, without intention, without the need to do anything or be anywhere other than exactly here, exactly now. The painter's breath slows. Their heartbeat becomes quiet and steady. They are not separate from the night sky. They are part of it, continuous with it, as much a natural phenomenon as the clouds and the moon and the stars. Time passes. How much time, the painter does not know and does not care. Eventually, the painter becomes aware that the moon has traveled considerably across the sky, that the stars have shifted in their slow rotation around the celestial pole, that the night has deepened toward that darkest hour that comes just before dawn. A gentle tiredness has settled into the painter's being, a signal from the body that rest is needed. The painter ascends once more to their studio, moving slowly through the silver-lit clouds, through the vast darkness, through the patient night, the space between sleep and waking. The cloud painter's studio welcomes them back with its soft, gentle glow. The walls of compressed cloud seem to breathe with a slow rhythm, expanding slightly and contracting slightly, as if the studio itself is a living thing that sleeps and wakes in its own cycles. The painter moves through this familiar space with the ease of long habit, their feet knowing every curve and contour of the floor, their hands knowing exactly where each object rests without needing to look. There is a basin in one corner where the painter washes, not with water heated over flame, but with cloud itself. The painter cups their hands and draws moisture from the air, concentrating it until it becomes liquid, until cool water pools in their palms. They splash this water on their face, feeling it wash away the day's efforts, feeling it refresh and renew. The water runs down their arms and drips back into the air, becoming vapor again, returning to the element from which it came. Nothing is wasted here. Everything cycles, everything returns, everything continues. The painter moves to their sleeping place, a bed made entirely of the softest clouds, clouds that have been compressed and shaped over many years until they are exactly the right density to provide support without firmness, to yield without collapsing. The painter lies down on this bed, and it accepts their weight with a gentle embrace, conforming perfectly to the shape of their body. It is like being held without being grasped, like floating without falling. Above the bed, the ceiling is open to the sky. The painter has designed it this way deliberately. wanting always to be able to see the stars, to fall asleep under the vast dome of heaven, to wake with the first light of dawn touching their face. Tonight, the opening frames a section of sky dense with stars, thousands of them visible, more than could ever be seen from the ground where city lights and atmospheric pollution obscure all but the brightest. The painter lies still, looking up at these stars, and begins to let go of the day. This is a practice they have cultivated over long years. The art of releasing, of allowing the day's experiences to settle without trying to hold on to them or push them away. The clouds created today will change and dissolve. The sunset that was so spectacular will never happen again in exactly that way. The people who were touched by the sky's beauty will forget, or will remember only vaguely, or will attribute their moment of peace to something other than clouds. And all of this is perfectly fine. The painter does not need to hold on to anything. Creation is its own reward. Beauty does not need to be permanent to be real. As the painter breathes slowly and deeply, their body begins to relax completely. The small tensions that accumulate even in a day spent floating through clouds begin to release. Shoulders soften. Jaw unclenches. The muscles around the eyes, which have been focused all day on subtle details of cloud formation, finally let go of their careful attention. The painter can feel their consciousness beginning to drift, beginning to loosen its grip on waking awareness. But the painter does not fall immediately into sleep. Instead, they enter that liminal space between waking and sleeping, that threshold state where the boundaries between self and world become permeable, where thoughts become dreamlike and dreams become thought-like. This is a space the painter has learned to inhabit consciously, to rest in without fully crossing over into sleep. It is a deeply restorative state, this conscious dreaming, this half-sleep that is also half-waking. In this state, the painter's mind begins to wander in interesting ways. Memories surface without being called, memories of other days, other clouds, other sunsets. The painter remembers a day years ago when they created clouds that formed the shape of a giant bird, wings spread wide across the sky. They remember another day when they made nothing but tiny, scattered clouds, each one perfect and separate, like seeds scattered across a field. They remember days of storm creation, when they worked with the wild energies of lightning and thunder, shaping forces far more powerful than themselves, channeling rather than controlling. These memories do not come with attachment or nostalgia. They simply arise, present themselves, and dissolve again, like thoughts during meditation, like clouds themselves. The painter observes them with interest but without clinging. Each memory is a moment that existed and now exists only as memory, and soon even the memories will fade, will be absorbed back into the general sense of a life lived among clouds and sky. The painter's awareness expands beyond their own memories to a broader sense of connection with all things. They can feel, in this borderland state of consciousness, their relationship to the water that makes up the clouds, water that has been everywhere, that has been part of everything, that connects all life on Earth through its endless cycling. They can feel their relationship to the air that surrounds them, air that has been breathed by billions of beings, air that carries within it molecules that were once part of forests and oceans, cities and storms. And beyond Earth, beyond air and water, the painter feels their connection to the stars still visible through the open ceiling. Those stars are so distant that their light has traveled for years, for centuries, for millennia to reach this moment. The light touching the painter's eyes left those stars before the painter was born, before the painter's parents were born, perhaps before humans had language or art or any concept of beauty. And yet here it is, arriving now, completing its long journey, connecting the unimaginably distant past with this present moment. Oem the oceans and rivers and rains. In this state of expanded awareness, the painter understands something that is difficult to put into words but that feels profoundly true, that everything is connected, that separation is an illusion, that the boundaries we perceive between self and other, between past and present, between here and there, are convenient fictions that help us navigate daily life but are not ultimately real. In the deepest sense, the painter is not separate from the clouds they create. The clouds are not separate from the water they contain. The water is not separate from the oceans and rivers and rains. Nothing stands alone. Everything interpenetrates everything else. This understanding brings with it a deep peace, a release from the anxiety that comes from feeling separate and isolated and alone. How can one be lonely when one is connected to everything? How can one be lost when one is always part of the whole? These questions drift through the painter's consciousness like clouds themselves, not demanding answers but simply present, simply there. The moon has moved across the sky, and is now shining directly through the opening above the bed. Its light falls on the painter's face, cool and silver, gentle and constant. The painter can feel this light as a physical presence, can sense the way it touches their skin, their closed eyelids, their lips that have curved into a slight smile. Moonlight, like starlight, has traveled far to arrive here. Not as far as starlight, but far enough. It has bounced off the moon's surface, has traveled through space, has passed through Earth's atmosphere, has entered this studio of clouds, and has come to rest on the face of one who has spent the day painting the sky. The painter's breathing has become very slow, very deep, very regular. Each breath in draws air that has been everywhere. Each breath out releases air that will go everywhere. The painter is not controlling the breath. The breath is breathing itself, the body knowing exactly what it needs without any conscious direction. This is trust. This is surrender. This is the deep wisdom of the body that knows how to live without thinking about living. Dreams of water and sky. The cloud painter has crossed the threshold now, has slipped from that liminal space between waking and sleeping into sleep itself. But it is not a deep sleep, not yet. It is a light sleep, the kind where awareness still flickers, where the mind remains partially engaged with the world even as it begins to spin its dreams. The body rests deeply and completely, but the consciousness drifts through landscapes both real and imagined, both memory and fantasy woven together into something that is neither and both. The painter dreams of water. This is not unusual. The painter often dreams of water, perhaps because their entire art form depends on understanding water in all its phases, all its moods, all its transformations. In the dream, the painter is standing at the edge of an ocean. The water stretches away to the horizon, vast and deep and endless. The surface of the water is perfectly calm, mirror-smooth, reflecting the sky above so perfectly that it becomes impossible to tell where the ocean ends and the sky begins. The world is all blue, blue water, blue sky, with no line of demarcation between them. The painter walks into the water. It is neither cold nor warm, but exactly body temperature, so that there is almost no sensation of entering water, just a slight change in resistance, a gentle pressure against the legs, the waist, the chest. The painter continues walking forward, and the water rises, but there is no fear of drowning, no panic about going too deep. In dreams, the usual rules do not apply. In dreams, the painter can breathe water as easily as air. The water closes over the painter's head, and now they are fully submerged, walking along the ocean floor. Light filters down from above, creating a soft, diffused illumination that makes everything glow slightly. The ocean floor is smooth and sandy, unmarked by any footprints, pristine and perfect. The painter continues walking, and as they walk, they begin to rise, begin to float upward through the water. The floating becomes flying, and the water becomes air, and suddenly the painter is not under the ocean but above it, soaring through the sky. This transition from water to air, from below to above, feels completely natural in the dream. It is simply what happens, requiring no explanation, no justification. The painter is flying now, arms outstretched, body horizontal, moving through the air with the ease of thought. Below, the ocean is still visible, still perfectly blue, still reflecting the sky. The painter flies higher, and now clouds begin to appear. Not the clouds the painter creates, but dream clouds, clouds that shift and change faster than real clouds, clouds that form faces and figures and strange shapes that dissolve as soon as they are recognized. The painter reaches out to touch one of these dream clouds, and their hand passes through it as if it were made of light rather than water vapor. The cloud shivers at the touch and transforms, becoming a flock of white birds that scatter in all directions, their wings catching the light. The painter watches them fly away and feels a joy that is pure and uncomplicated, the kind of joy that children feel, that animals feel, that comes from simply being alive and witnessing beauty. The dream shifts as dreams do, without transition or logic. Now the painter is not flying but falling, dropping through the sky at tremendous speed. But there is no fear in this falling. The painter knows with dream certainty that this falling is intentional, that they are falling towards something rather than away from something. The air rushes past, and the painter's clothes and hair stream out behind them, and the sensation is exhilarating rather than frightening. The painter is falling through their own clouds now, the clouds they created during the day. They recognize each one as they pass through it, the large cumulus cloud that grew so tall, the dark cloud heavy with potential rain, the thin cirrus wisps high in the atmosphere. Each cloud is a marker of the day's work, a milestone in the journey downward. And as the painter falls through each cloud, they feel a connection to it, a recognition, the way one might feel seeing old friends. The falling slows, becomes gentle, becomes a drifting. The painter is descending toward the earth now, toward the world of solid things and gravity, and people living their complicated lives. The painter can see a town below, houses arranged along streets, trees growing in yards, a river running through the center. The painter drifts down toward this town, down toward one particular house with a lit window. Through the window, the painter can see a person sitting alone. The person is old, their hair white, their hands gnarled with age. They are sitting in a comfortable chair, looking out their window at the night sky, at the stars and the moon and the clouds that the painter created. And on the person's face is an expression of peace, of contentment, of someone who has found a moment of rest in the midst of life's complexities. The painter hovers outside the window, watching this person watch the sky. And the painter understands, with the deep knowing that dreams sometimes bring, that this person is suffering. They have lost someone they loved. They are in pain. They are afraid of what the future holds. But in this moment, looking at the sky, they have found a brief respite from their suffering. The clouds and stars have given them a gift, not a solution to their problems, not an answer to their questions, but simply a moment of beauty that reminds them that the world is larger than their pain, that beauty still exists, that peace is possible. The painter feels tears on their face, though whether these tears exist in the dream or in the sleeping body lying in the studio of clouds, they cannot say. These are tears of compassion, of recognition, of connection to the suffering and joy of all beings. This is why the painter paints clouds, not for fame or recognition or any personal reward, but for moments like this, for the possibility of easing suffering in some small way, for the chance to offer beauty to those who need it. The dream shifts again. Now the painter is back in their studio, lying in their bed of clouds, looking up at the stars through the open ceiling. But this is the dream studio, not the real studio, and everything is slightly different, slightly stranger. The stars are closer, larger, brighter. They pulse with light, as if they are breathing. The moon is singing, though the song has no words, just a pure tone that resonates through everything. And then the painter becomes aware of other presences in the studio. Turning their head, they see figures made of cloud, shaped like people but translucent, luminous. These are the cloud beings, the spirits of water and air, though whether they are real entities or projections of the painter's own mind, it is impossible to say. The cloud beings sit in a circle around the painter's bed, silent and still, watching over the painter's sleep. The painter is not afraid of these beings. They have appeared in dreams before, have been companions and witnesses to the painter's solitary work. The painter understands that they are aspects of the sky itself, personifications of the forces the painter works with every day. Or perhaps they are aspects of the painter's own consciousness, the parts of themselves that have merged with cloud and sky and wind through years of devoted practice. One of the cloud beings leans forward and touches the painter's forehead with a hand that is barely there, that is more suggestion than substance. And with that touch comes a feeling of blessing, of approval, of being seen and known and accepted completely. The painter's eyes close, or perhaps they were already closed, and now they close even more deeply, and the dream begins to fade, to dissolve like a cloud in dry air. The return of light. The darkness of deep sleep begins to thin, becomes less absolute, less complete. The cloud painter's consciousness starts its slow journey back toward waking, rising through layers of sleep like a diver ascending from the depths, careful not to rise too quickly, taking time to adjust to each level before moving to the next. The dreams have faded now, dissolved back into whatever mysterious place dreams come from and return to. What remains is simply rest, deep and restorative, the kind of rest that allows the body to repair itself, the mind to integrate the day's experiences, the spirit to renew its connection to the source of all energy and life. The painter's breathing, which slowed almost to stillness during the deepest part of sleep, begins to quicken slightly. The body knows, without any conscious awareness, that dawn is approaching. This knowledge is ancient, built into the cells themselves, older than thought, older than culture, older than humanity. The body has kept time with the sun for billions of years of evolution, and it remembers. It knows when light is coming, even before the light arrives. The first hint of dawn is not light, but a lessening of darkness. The black of night becomes charcoal, becomes slate, becomes the gray that holds within it the promise of blue. The stars begin to fade, not all at once but gradually, the dimmer ones disappearing first while the brightest hold on a bit longer. The moon, which has been a constant companion through the night, becomes paler, less luminous, begins to look like a painting of itself rather than the brilliant silver lantern it appeared to be in full darkness. The cloud painter's eyes open, though they do not remember deciding to open them. One moment they are closed, and the next they are open, looking up through the studio's ceiling at the changing sky. There is no grogginess, no confusion about where they are or how they came to be here. The painter wakes as naturally as they fell asleep, moving from one state to another without resistance or difficulty. The painter lies still for a long moment, simply breathing, simply being, simply watching the sky transform. This is one of the painter's favorite times, the pre-dawn, when the world is poised between night and day, when anything seems possible, when everything is about to begin again. There is a freshness to this hour, a sense of renewal, of the world being made new once more. Yesterday is gone, truly gone, dissolved into memory and dream. Today has not yet arrived, not quite. There is only this moment, this breath, this gentle anticipation. The sky continues to lighten. The gray takes on warmth, becomes tinged with the faintest suggestion of peach, of rose, of gold. The clouds that the painter created yesterday, which were invisible in the full darkness of night, begin to become visible again, emerging from obscurity like thoughts taking form, like memories returning. They are still there, these clouds, though they have changed through the night, have been reshaped by winds and by their own internal dynamics. They are not exactly the same clouds the painter made, but they are descendants of those clouds, children of yesterday's work. The painter sits up slowly, feeling the bed of clouds adjust and reshape beneath them. They stretch their arms above their head, feeling the pleasant pull of muscles extending, feeling the spine lengthen and align. The body feels good this morning, rested and ready, prepared for another day of work. But there is no hurry. The sunrise is still minutes away, and these minutes are precious, are to be savored. The painter rises from the bed and moves to the edge of the platform. The air is cool with the coolness that comes just before dawn, when the earth has been radiating heat all night and has grown cold, before the sun returns to warm it once more. The painter breathes this cool air deeply, filling their lungs, feeling the crispness of it, the way it seems to wake up every cell in the body. Far below, the world is beginning to stir. The painter can sense it, the first birds beginning to sing, the first people waking, the first movements of a new day beginning. Soon the roads will fill with cars, the sidewalks with people hurrying to wherever they need to be. Soon the world will be busy again, caught up in its endless activities and concerns. But for now, in these last moments before dawn, there is stillness, there is peace, there is a collective pause before the day's dance begins. The horizon in the east is glowing now, brightening steadily. The clouds near the horizon begin to catch the first light, not the sun itself, not yet, but the light that precedes the sun, the light that announces its coming. These clouds turn pink, then coral, then gold. The painter watches this transformation with the same attention they would give to their own work, with the same appreciation for beauty unfolding in its own time. And then at last the sun appears. Just the smallest arc of it at first, just the very top edge cresting the horizon like a ship appearing over the edge of the sea. But even this small fragment is brilliant, almost too bright to look at, a concentrated point of light that seems to contain all the energy and warmth that will power the entire day. The painter watches as more of the sun emerges, as the arc becomes a semicircle, as the semicircle becomes a full circle of blazing gold. With the sun's appearance, everything changes. The world is washed with light, with color, with the return of visibility and clarity. The clouds become fully visible again, their forms clear and distinct. The sky transforms from gray to blue, that particular shade of morning blue that is somehow different from the blue of midday or afternoon. The darkness retreats, not defeated but simply stepping back, making room, waiting for its turn to return when the day is done. The painter feels something rising in their chest, not quite emotion, not quite thought, but something that partakes of both. It is a feeling of gratitude, perhaps, or wonder, or simple acknowledgement that this miracle has happened again, that the sun has returned, that light has defeated darkness once more, that the cycle continues, reliable and constant and true. No matter what chaos might exist in the world of human affairs, no matter what suffering or confusion or fear people might experience, the sun will rise. The dawn will come. The light will return. This is certain. This is sure. This is the promise that nature makes and keeps, day after day, without fail. The painter stands at the edge of the platform, arms outstretched, face turned toward the rising sun, and simply receives the light. It falls on their face, their arms, their body, warming the skin, banishing the coolness of night, restoring energy and vitality. The painter can feel the light entering through their skin, through their eyes, being absorbed and converted into the energy that powers all living things. The painter is being recharged, being renewed, being made ready for another day of creation. After a long moment, the painter lowers their arms and steps back from the edge. There will be work to do today. There is always work to do. New clouds to create, yesterday's clouds to tend or allow to dissipate, the endless dance with water and air and light that is the painter's art and practice and purpose. But the work will come in its own time. For now, there is just this, the dawn, the light, the beginning of a new day. The painter moves back into the studio and begins to prepare morning tea, the same ritual that began yesterday, that will begin tomorrow, that has begun countless mornings before. The water is gathered, the flame is lit, the leaves are steeped. And as the tea brews, filling the air with its earthy fragrance, the cloud painter looks out over the sky and begins to sense what today's clouds might want to be, what shape they might take, what message they might carry to the world below. But this knowing is gentle, not insistent. It will unfold slowly, will reveal itself over the course of the day. There is no rush. There is never any rush. The sky is patient. The clouds are patient. And the painter, who has learned wisdom from water and air, from sunrise and sunset, from the endless cycle of creation and dissolution, is patient too. The tea is ready. The sun is rising higher. A new day has begun. And somewhere below, people are waking to find clouds in the sky, clouds that seem to have appeared by accident or chance, but that were actually created with love, with intention, with the hope that they might bring a moment of peace, a breath of calm, a reminder that beauty exists and that the world, despite everything, continues to unfold in patterns of order and grace. The cloud painter sips their tea, feeling its warmth spread through their body, and smiles. It is a small smile, barely there, but it is genuine. It is the smile of someone who has found their purpose, who has discovered their place in the great web of existence, who understands that even the smallest act of creation, a single cloud shaped with care, can ripple outward in ways that cannot be measured or fully known, but that matter nonetheless. The day stretches ahead, full of possibility, full of potential, full of the promise that comes with every dawn. And the cloud painter, renewed and rested and ready, prepares to step once more into the sky, to begin again the work that never ends but that is never the same, the work of painting beauty into the air, of shaping peace from water and light, of tending the great canvas of heaven for all who have eyes to see and hearts quiet enough to receive the gift. The end.